بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد أشرف المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه الطيبين الطاهرين. I start by the name of Allah. I thank Him and praise Him for the countless blessings that He's granted us without being obligated to do so. And I humbly ask Allah Ta'ala to raise the rank of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his kind family, and his great companions. Thereafter, dear brothers and sisters, inshaAllah, in our lesson today, we will continue with the explanation of the sins of the tongue. And so the author said, may Allah Ta'ala have mercy upon him, to utter what is known as al-dhihar, which is for a man to say to his wife, you are like my mother to me, or my sister, or my aunt, meaning that I would not have intercourse with you, just as I would not have intercourse with my mother. This is considered a major sin because of the harm that is inflicted on the wife. And furthermore, if one does not divorce his wife immediately after saying something like this, then he is obligated to pay something called an expiation, which here is to free a Muslim slave, whether male or female, who has no disability, meaning they are clear of anything that prevents them from the ability to work. And if the husband is unable to free a slave, then he is obligated to fast 2 consecutive lunar months. And if this fast is interrupted, even for 1 day, he has to start over. He has to start that 2 months over. And if the husband is unable to fast, then he is obligated to feed 60 poor or destitute Muslims. He would feed them 60 muds by giving every one of them 1 mud of the most common staple food within that area. Next is to commit mistakes when reciting the Quran, whether or not those mistakes would change the meaning of the Quran. As well, for the one who is wealthy, to beg. This is among the sins of the tongue. Meaning for a wealthy person to ask others to give him money, even though he has enough to satisfy his basic needs, or is able to earn his living from an Islamically permissible craft that one could do. As well, to make a vow with the purpose of depriving an heir from their share of the inheritance. Such a vow is considered invalid. For a person to vow that they would not allow this person to inherit anything from them, even though they are Islamically entitled to that inheritance. Next is to neglect notifying another person of a debt that one owes, or an object that was entrusted to them for safekeeping, which no one other than them knows about. And due to a deadly disease that has inflicted them, they fear that the object or the debt would not be paid back to the rightful owners. On the other hand, if a person whose testimony is accepted by an Islamic judge knows of this object or this debt, then leaving a will in such a case becomes a recommended matter. Next is for a person to falsely claim that they are from the offspring of other than their own father. And next is to propose to a woman while she is engaged to another Muslim. That is, for a man to propose to a woman while he knows that she has already been proposed to by another Muslim, and that the approval of this engagement has been established by someone whose approval is religiously valid, for instance, the Muslim father, unless the man that first proposed gives another Muslim permission to propose to that woman, or he cancels his engagement. And next is to give a religious ruling without knowledge, meaning to give an answer to a question regarding the religion without having the proper knowledge. And also from the sins of the tongue is to teach others or to seek out what is religiously considered harmful knowledge, such as sorcery or magic, without an Islamically valid reason to learn something like this. And next is to judge by other than the laws of Islam and the rules of the religion that Allah Ta'ala revealed upon His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is a major sin. And if one rejects the law of Islam, or if one claims that his judgment is equal to or better than the religious judgment, then such a person is no longer a Muslim. And also from the sins of the tongue is to wail, meaning to voluntarily scream in a way that reflects panic and impatience upon the death of a person. As well to lament the good attributes of the deceased as if he were to hear. That is, to express grief in words which are said loudly in a mournful way and mention the good attributes of this deceased person as if they were there, as if they were talking to them. Such as to say, Wa kahfa, or Wa jabala, or Ya sanadi, which are phrases in Arabic that were commonly used by people who would wail in the past, signifying that the deceased person was a reliable person and that he would bear the burdens and responsibilities of others. It is also prohibited to utter words which encourage one to do the unlawful matters. For instance, to say to another person, hit Zayd, or go and kill Zayd unrightfully, or to utter words which discourage one from performing the obligations, such as one saying to another, don't pray right now. Instead, just make it up at home after the time of the prayer has ended. As well, to utter words which defame Islam. That is, to utter words that dispraise or discredit the truth of Islam, such as for one to say the statement which contradicts the Islamic belief. Learning matters of the religion makes a person complicated. As well, to utter words which defame any of the prophets, like the claim of some people that Yusuf alayhi salam had a firm intention to commit adultery, or to utter words which defame the scholars, like what some people say without restriction, the scholars have made the religion complicated. Or to utter words which defame the Quran, such as belying what is mentioned within it. And as well to utter words which defame the well-known matters of the religion of Allah Ta'ala, such as the prayer and the zakah and the adhan, the call to prayer, as well as ablution or wudu. And as well from the sins of the tongue is to refrain from ordering the obligations and forbidding the sins. That is, without a valid religious excuse, and one is able to do so, without having any fear that they would be inflicted with physical harm or the like. On the other hand, if a person believes that by forbidding a sinful act, whether physically or verbally, that this may lead to a sin which is worse, then in such a case, they are not allowed to do this. They are not allowed to forbid this sin. And next is to withhold the obligatory knowledge that one is personally obligated to teach from a person who has requested it. As well, for one to voluntarily laugh at a Muslim because he has passed gas, or to laugh at another Muslim to degrade him because he is from a lower social status, for instance. And as well, from the sins of the tongue is to withhold testimony without a religious excuse when it is an obligation upon him to testify, meaning that one was summoned by the judge to give this testimony. Next is to neglect returning the Islamic salutation when it is obligatory upon one to return it. For instance, when an accountable Muslim says the Islamic salutation to a specific person who is also an accountable Muslim and is of the same gender by saying Assalamu alaikum, the other Muslim in this situation is obligated to return the salam. And next is to lustfully kiss another person, such as a husband or a wife, while one is in the state of performing the acts of Hajj or Umrah, meaning they are in the state of Ihram. Or while one is fasting an obligatory fast, such as fasting the month of Ramadan. That is, if one fears ejaculation while they are fasting because of this kiss. Next is to kiss a person that one is not allowed to kiss. For instance, it is prohibited for a man to kiss a marriageable woman. Now this concludes the sins of the tongue. And next we will enter into the sins of the ear. And so among the sins of the ear is to listen to the private conversation which was meant to be hidden from a person. It is a sin for one to listen to the conversation of other people without an excuse, while knowing that they want to hide their conversation from them. As well, to listen to the flute or the tumbur on purpose, as they are prohibited musical instruments. And the tumbur, as we mentioned before, is a string instrument that resembles the lute. And it is prohibited as well to listen to the rest of the unlawful sounds. Also to listen to gossip about a Muslim or tale-bearing and similar matters from the sins of the tongue without forbidding them while one is able to do so. However, one is not sinful if they hear these things unwillingly and they hate it in their heart. But if one is able, then they must stop its occurrence. They must stop the occurrence of this sin by physical means if they are able. And if not, then by verbal means. And if they're unable, then they must hate it in their heart and they must leave this session immediately. May Allah Ta'ala protect us from these sins. وسبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.